and then grab my little other thing. Hang
I do
on.
love that though. There's a little countdown. Three, two, one. Broadly like jazz. You've got to remember not to swear. This is the
Well,
thing now.
it is my show where swearing is not only allowed but encouraged.
Encouraged, encouraged.
Um,
Good British swearing then. Matt,
yes,
hi.
Giles.
Always a pleasure.
Giles Shater.
That's me. That's
I
me.
called you. I called you Chatter for probably 5 years. You allowed me to make a fool of myself and pronounced your name incorrectly.
Yes, to great amusement. I like to think you will continue to make a fool of yourself from time to time because, we all enjoy that.
Well, listen. Audience knows I'm a fan of the United Kingdom. I've been to the United Kingdom in I've been in August and I've been in December. And what month were we just in now? June, July?
Yes, June. It was June all month. It
But
is now July.
nowhere in your fair island had I ever been in a place where air conditioning does not exist. And it turns out that once in a while on this planet of ours, it gets above 80 degrees, that's Fahrenheit, and one needs air conditioning. So I was as surprised as anyone that in 2025 I could check in a hotel and there'd be a little fan that I could push the button and say, "Here's your air."
What I would say is you were lucky you had a little fan. As Matt and I were sharing a bedroom in that little Airbnb with no fan and no air conditioning, um, we were thinking, oh, this is a little bit warm. This isn't fun at all. Yeah, I think that was a problem experienced by a lot of people. And it is genuinely not that hot. In fact, I don't think it has ever been that hot in a June in that part of the country since we started recording temperatures. So maybe it'll be raining and miserable next year, and you'll need another blanket and no fan.
Perhaps. I mean, it is on par with having the coldest worlds in a little city called Atlanta, Georgia, where no one expected to freeze their tuchus off and have their bib turn into an icicle, which did in fact happen. And the previous and next weekends were, 60s and 70s.
I
So
remember I have some memories of huddling around a little hobo bin with a number of the other crew in our kind of where the trucks were, the boneyard as it would be. Like, oh, this is thoroughly unpleasant. But then you can't say that, right? Because you're thinking it must be so much worse for everybody raining. A bit like, you can't complain about being tired at 4 a.m. in the morning because you're watching people run past you. And so people are like, how are you? And you're like, I want to say tired, but
right.
I know I'm
The
not
only
allowed.
the only truth in or the only thing that's actually quite is that people do understand is that if you're pitting for your crew member, you are actually colder because you're not moving. Your athlete is moving and perspiring to some extent, even though they might be in and out of water more than you. It is very tough on the crew who who they're moving around a little bit. Um, but yes, I think the other most surprising thing was I was out to dinner with my good friend JD Allen on the Thursday night. When does the race start? Saturday?
It feels like this is one of these trick questions. I'm going to get my rule book out. Yes, it started on Saturday.
On Friday evening, we were having dinner, and I believe I met him at 7:30 p.m. And so when I walked out an hour and a half later, and it was still dusk, I really it took me a moment because I'm coming from the different part of the world. My watch is different, you know what I mean? And I was like, how is it not dark yet? It is 9:30 p.m. and it is not like it's not about to be dark. It's fucking dusk. So this was definitely an experience that you guys may have warned us about, but the amount of lighted hours was, I think, quite a difference. Typically you run a couple laps, sun goes down. This was not the case in England.
So as you say, we did warn you. It's pretty cool. And how do we move to Scotland? It's like even more egregious. You can be in a place where it's like 20 odd hours of daylight in the day. But I spoke to a couple of racers who experienced that very differently. Some people felt like, oh, it's 3:45 in the morning. The light's coming up and life is good. I was catching up with Melissa, and she was saying almost the opposite. What she's used to is once the light comes up, you've broken the back of the race, right? And all of a sudden it's now light, and there's still a full 8 hours plus of running to go. And so that took a little bit of getting a head round, she reckoned.
Well, I do know several Melissas. Which one are you referring to?
Lingram, she who's her and James I've known for quite a while, and
Okay.
yeah, they're great. In fact, I saw them in Morzine just last weekend, and the number of people who did WTM and then headed out to the Spartan Ultra World Champs to run was also quite remarkable. Yeah, apparently that's the way to shake your legs out.
There should be a medal for that, maybe.
Maybe.
One thing Spartan TM needs: more championships, more medals. That's what people have been clamoring about.
I tell you what, when we can make sure we get all of the medals at the right time into the right place, we'll think about adding some more.
All right, I have to ask you. We let's just jump to this bit about the announcement, and let the record show. When I first saw it posted on Monday morning, that it was looking to be back there, which most of us assumed anyway. I thought I'd missed something because I saw it on another page, and I thought, did they send out an email last night? I don't get all the emails all the time, or they go to spam. So I sent you a message, and you were probably in bed. No, because it was the night. It was Sunday night. The race ends Sunday morning, Sunday night, but you were probably asleep. And so then time goes on, and it's in every single group, and it's all over the internet. And I'm like, well, it's certainly fair game at this point. So was the plan always to announce both years, or was it, well, shit, let's just tell everybody both years now?
Yes, the plan was always to announce both years.
Okay.
We did not leak year one, so we could do a fancy year two. That just got pulled out of our live test environment.
Yes.
And I think the reality of AI and search being what it is now, and actually just some of our races being very excitable and we need to be more careful with those live environments.
Listen, our friends over at High Rocks are getting same thing with the venue, just puts it on their calendar, right? They've got the dentist convention this week. They've got, the European scientists the next week, and the next week is High Rocks. So it goes on their calendar. So this is how people find out. And of course they send it to me right away because they're excited. But again, I assumed 2 years. It seemed like we're not going to bother to do this whole thing if we're just going to do it once, right?
Yeah, I mean, well, there's a number of things, right? You learn so much in the first year about how the venue, plays out in this kind of a, environment. Which parts of the venue? There's so much. We learn as race organizers. We can dig into that if interesting. And then I also think at the other side, right, the community learns a lot as well. Simple things like, which supermarkets do I get my nutrition products in? Or is it just the case that I go to Tesco's and it's not there, so the Brits don't have it? Well, that's not actually the case. Where do I stay? What can I buy? Who do I hook up with? Where do I holiday afterwards? I think we created this artificial, when we left Vegas and we didn't really find a home and we started bouncing around, I think we created this artificial need to keep moving it year on year and find another venue. And in our heads, right, that became a bit of a thing, an announcement. But nobody was wondering a couple of years into Vegas whether we were going to be coming back to Vegas again. And so I just almost trying to kill that idea that we just bounce these events around. I would rather create something that's a bit more like a permanent home. Will we move it again in the future? Probably. But will we ever get to a point where it's like really regularly moving? No, I certainly hope not.
No, the first 3 were Jersey, and the next 4 were Vegas, and that made sense. And then 2 in Atlanta, and then apparently everybody hated Atlanta, my fair city. The numbers did dip because I went back and looked, but the first Atlanta year was not that bad. It was over 1,000 that first Atlanta year. I think someone at one point had told me that Atlanta was the worst years, and that's not the case. But it did dip that second year, probably because it was so bloody cold the first year.
Well, yeah, a little bit of that, a little bit of marketing, almost certainly. But I guess to the point you're making, you definitely have a big drop off in numbers every time you move venues. right? Same date, same location. And that's pretty much any event organizer anywhere in the world follows that handbook.
Right.
And you're rebuilding when you move, so you don't want to do it too often.
Well, and a lot of people were asking me, how is it? How does it compare? And I always say, give it a couple weeks to settle. But also, what I've learned is because the event is a living, breathing organism, right? It's not Tough Mudder or TM Spartan. It's not the racers. It's not Sean. It's all of us. It's this third entity called World's Toughest Mudder. And if you go into it to get out as much as possible, it doesn't matter if it's in June or October, right? And it doesn't matter if it's in England or Atlanta, right? It is what you make of it. It's truly just like the just sort of the life lesson of how can this relate to my life and overcoming obstacles. It really is that case. So yes, it was hot. Yes, it was in the summer, but I wasn't sitting around the whole time going, why are we doing this in the summer? Why isn't it November right now? I mean, and now that you've got this one sort of out of the way, the short timeline, now we're kind of good, right?
Yes. I mean, that was tough, right? It was tough enough from a sales cycle, really tough on the community as well. That's not a lot of time to make a plan. That point about, right, this is the A race for a lot of people. This is that thing on their calendar, that thing they save up for. And we were forced, in making this change, right, we were forced to constrict that. But now we're back to a 12-month cycle. That should be more manageable for people who struggled this year.
The one question I definitely had, somebody asked me, somebody specifically said, if it's going to be light for more hours, why do the headlamp rules stay the same?
Yeah, I think we ran, in hindsight, we probably ran the headlight rules. We could have started a little bit later. Where you draw that line is obviously a little bit of a gut check, right? Maybe we just send people out with a head torch without requiring them to have it. I don't know. I guess my point is we will move it, but there are some people who spend an awful lot of time on the course. And when it gets dark, and being out there without light is less than ideal.
Right.
We had a lady appear at about 3 a.m. She's like, my boyfriend should be back by now. Okay. When did they go out? 12:30 or 1 o'clock. I'm like, it's not that unreasonable, right? I wouldn't stress about it. Like, off you go. And then she comes back at like 5, and she's like, he should really be back by now. 4-hour lap, 4.5-hour lap. You're right. We'll go have a look-see, right? Come back and, we'll find him. So she comes back at 7 then, and she's really quite stressed now. And she's like, what's going on? And we'd found this gentleman by this time. That's where he's gone out for this lap, decided this is it. I cannot possibly do another lap. So just parked up at the lake, like 100 meters from the finish line, wherever he got there, like 2:30 in the morning, and sat there till 9. Just spent 7 hours sitting by the lake. And I was thinking, that kind of thing can happen, right? You don't want someone to make that decision without light. But one of many takeaways I think we have for the race is, what else do we start to adjust now? We really
and that was my thought. My thought was somebody just forgot to adjust the rule book, and they're just going by whatever the normal rule book is. I thought you were going to say we found him, and he said, "Please get her away. I've broken up with this woman, and she won't leave me alone. She's chasing me down." And
which probably would have been cooler, because in my head I was thinking, you just limp back to your tent, sleep for 5 hours, and then you got another 4 hours to walk a lap, right? That's pretty early to call yourself as unable to keep going,
right?
Especially as there are probably people out there will help you around, carry you around if you need it.
The other one was around we typically, once the sun goes down, have to either point to an animal or do strange math or read a sentence.
Yes, the neuro checks.
Yes, that's what they're called.
Yeah, look, now we move into the UK, we've got a different clinical director, making decisions, and their view was we're going to keep an eye on people, and we're going to check when we think there's a reason to check, as opposed to just mandatory checks all the time. And so that's what we did, and it turned out to be absolutely fine.
Yeah, again, that's my guess. Different country, different rules. I mean, was there anything else, I guess, that I guess I haven't asked you that were different that maybe we didn't even notice that you guys sort of made UK special or changed?
I mean, not particularly, slightly different team, slightly different flavor or feel, but we didn't want to attempt to reinvent WTM at all. I think we talked about the quick pit stuff, which probably needs refining a little bit into the future. That was a little bit messy, particularly at the start of the race. I think where start and finish line are and how that progresses through the race is something else we will look at. I think we could have done a better job with the finish experience. But no, we're not wanting to make WTM something different. And I think we were relatively successful at having it feel different, but having it feel familiar.
Yes. A question I had, I did make my way out to Firefly, and I did think, why is there not a photographer at this obstacle? And if there was and I wasn't there, that's fine. But why was someone not planted there for all those beautiful dark hours?
I mean, I've certainly seen a lot of beautiful photographs from Firefly, so they must have been photographers there at one point or another. I don't know. When Firefly opened, I was busy marking a killer gorilla into the hillside, and so I didn't get to it till much later in the evening.
Okay. All right. No, there was definitely some social stuff, but I thought, oh man, they got to have somebody sitting here. Like this is like the money shot of the weekend.
I
I
have a
guess
question for you then. Whilst we're on
yes,
Firefly,
yes,
so Matt and I were just chatting about that. I obviously familiar with the cliff. In fact, I was involved in building that abseil, and Superman abseiled off it. So I've got a lot of memories for it, but it's fairly substantial, right? There are a number of people who decided, no, Firefly is not for me. And we have the ability to recreate the cliff. We could build a scaffold structure there that's a similar height, but it would mean more than doubling or a little bit over doubling the height of the jump. Is it the right thing to do?
Well, I happen to know because I spoke with Kyle year in, year out and multiple people that in attempting to recreate the cliff, we did the stacks and then a lot of people skipped it. And you thought, well, what the hell are we building this for? And I think that makes sense. If something costs 100K or 200K or some massive amount, but you could still make something really cool. I think Firefly was great. And I think the penalty was you still had to crawl up there, right? And then get down.
Yeah, yes, you had to go up and spend a period of time
Like
deciding
30,
not to jump. Yeah,
right.
and then down you
Yeah,
went
I,
and did
I,
the
I I
penalty.
think. Listen, the cliff was one of a kind, right? Like you're not gonna recreate it. It's this perfect plate. Which, by the way, I don't. I think there's houses there now. You can't even do the race anymore. Um, so the idea of well, let's recreate the cliff, genius. Let's do the stacks. Until you realize that no one's doing it, and yeah, I don't think you should build something just for the sake of it. I did think I would see, I guess, a few more obstacles. That was kind of my complaint, was that I did think there would be a little bit more innovation. This idea of, hey, we've got all three kits for Mutter and Spartan and Worlds, and we can do all this stuff. Because kind of typically that was the historically what you would do. You would sort of break something out in Worlds. Sometimes that meant closing it shortly thereafter because it didn't work, but at least it was an attempt. So I would say I know that's a balance you want to get right, but was there thought of implementing more new stuff, or will you try to in the future?
We will definitely implement more in the future. Look, I think I touched on this at the brunch, right? There was this real sense of responsibility in bringing it into the UK that we couldn't mess it up. And part of that is not being too crazy with innovation, right? We had to pull the net off pyramid scheme. Right idea, didn't quite execute it right. Similar thing with Prostrat or whatever we end up calling that one. Those like the idea was fine and it was interesting, but that needed to be adjusted mid event as well. If you can't test something for real, right, with the same volume of people in the same environment in advance, there's a degree of gamble, right? We make, well, it's not quite gambling. We're relatively educated as far as our educated guesses go. And so I think whilst we brought some cool stuff in and Firefly was super successful and a number of the other changes were great, we also played relatively conservatively compared to what we could have done. I think having got the foundation right, we can now take a little bit more a risk with the obstacles as we get into the next couple of years. If that makes sense.
Totally. Certainly exacerbated by the heat being out in the open. So on a less hot year, it might not be as noticeable, but could we get sort of like, that's what I felt like the difference between that and say Georgia was. Georgia is kind of similar. There's a bunch, it's a big, there's not a castle, but there's like a mansion and there's a lot of open field and horse stuff, but you find a way to get us in and out of the woods a fair amount. And so is there a way to get us in and out of the woods more to have less of that just giant open field running?
Yes. Look, there are a lot of really interesting parts of that venue we've not used. There's some parts that have some good elevation where we wouldn't need to, try and artificially add the elevation. So I guess as I think about open fields, right, you've got two areas. You've got the main obstacle field, which is great. It's clay-based. We'll probably do a lot more, digging-based obstacles in there in the future. It's really good from a digging perspective. And then there are only so many places you can cross the lake. So if you cross the lake roughly where we did, you're then just committed to a lot of open field if you want to go and get that hill up. And we wanted to take people up there because of the view. As we build out the course for the next couple of years, we're going to end up compromising. We won't be able to get people into the other woods, into the other elevation, and get the view, and get the river crossing, and get into the main field. But you should definitely expect to see different parts of the venue over the next couple of years, and there's some really good stuff in there.
Okay.
I have this thing I've wanted to do for years, that view up at the top. I just want to throw a whole bunch of chairs there and have, maybe a string quartet out for a couple hours, just playing some classical music. And in my head, with the exception of people who were just pounding out crazy, like people just stop and take 2 or 3 minutes and just are present in the moment. And it's brilliant. Who knows whether that works out in practice?
That's a genius idea.
One day.
How much can a string quartet be for half a dozen hours?
Yeah. Done. Well, I've got one person who's bought into my vision. I just got to convince the team. But one day this is going to happen, Matt.
All right. Well, listen, great catch up as always.
As always. You were very gentle with the questions this time. I appreciate it.
Listen, I call it like I see it. And what can I tell you? I mean, like I said, at the end of the day, if you surrender to it, WTM is WTM. And there's always going to be stuff you like and don't like. I said to my friend Ian, I said, we might have an opinion about this, Ian from UKHXR, but let's talk to racers. And if the racers say it was amazing, then that's what matters. And the racers were like, I had a great time, and this is why. So, yeah, bump up the obstacle. Can we bump up the obstacle number, or are we stuck at 20? Is it 20?
I mean, we're not stuck at 20. I had somebody very irate with me partway through the night when we added Killer Gorilla. You said 20 obstacles and now 21 open. This is unacceptable, etc., etc. So we closed skid marked, and we were back to 20, and therefore there could be no complaining. Look, it's about balance. We could put more obstacles in. The kind of distances that people achieved this year felt right. I think
you didn't have 800 milers, you mean?
No, it wasn't too easy, but equally we didn't have everybody falling short of their goals because it was just gratuitously difficult. I feel that there were a lot of people who deserved the mileage they got, and we're also really proud for having achieved the mileage they got, because it was not a gimme at all, right? It was challenging, both what we built and, I think the thing that had nothing to do with us was it was just so hard underfoot as well. Some of those fields are rutted up because of either vehicles or the livestock, and it was just, and because it's a clay-based mud, it was just baked like stone almost. And so I think that took a real toll on people as well. But no, I felt the difficulty was where we want to pitch it, and obviously we made an adjustment partway through the race just to add a little bit of elevation to make sure again we got that challenge. And I bring that up by way of saying, yes, we could add more obstacles, but we need to be mindful about what that does to the overall difficulty. We could have a larger overall number of obstacles, but keep less of them open at any given time, as one way to achieve what we want. I think a couple of other bigger obstacles probably comes in, but I don't think you will see us go back to what was the first time where we hung the little banana widgets on the rig, and the failure rate on that was like,
Yes.
We're not going to go back to that. I think
that was 22.
Yeah. People who have the physical capability and train should be rewarded for getting through.
Yes.
But it should also be at least manageable for part of the race for a reasonable portion of the racer as well. So more, but not gratuitous for sure. I was also pleased, I was pleased for a number of other things about the races. The number of first-time races we had was brilliant. The sustainability of WTM is tied to the number of people that come to it. Really pleased with what we saw there, but we need to grow that number. And we attracted a lot of new people out of Europe, out of other races, a number of people who were not just pulling from TM, right? This idea that TM is the feeder for WTM is just not real. I did a TM 5K and my next natural progression's a 24-hour race. That's not real. And whilst there are portions of the community that add so valuably to the WTM experience, we don't really want. I want a race that is largely made up of people who are up for the challenge, who are going to put reasonable mileage down, who are going to be out at night. Running at night and having lots of people out with you, as opposed to running by yourself because everybody else has gone to bed. Even if you have the same number of people who signed up to the race, that's two very different experiences. And I felt we had a lot more people who were out for a longer period of time as well, which was brilliant.
And you and I have talked about this, about bringing in other people. Did you, your Slack is going off like crazy, mate. Did you try to convert some of those, the podium from Morzine? Because I saw a couple of trail runners. There's a woman who is a trail walker, apparently. That's a thing, a speed trail walking thing that did well. So are you trying to convert them over?
Yes, we absolutely are. Obviously, Calendar is pretty impactful at the top end of the field, doing WTM and Morzine back-to-back weekends if you're trying to podium. Probably not perfect training. I think we'll continue to see a strengthening of the field at the top. We obviously had a really talented group of athletes here this year. I also think we're seeing a lot of people in that 50 to 80 range coming in, which is brilliant as well. And as you say, there were a reasonable number of people who'd never done an OCR at all or never done a TM at all, which was brilliant. But I want to come back to the point you made a couple of times. The races bring so much of what makes WTM. And so it's so important for the people who really understand the legacy and understand what it needs to be imparting that to the people who are here for the first time. I think if you had an 85% new racer group, it probably wouldn't feel like WTM as we know it, regardless of what we did from the TM side. So there's this need for the community to be embracing those people who are new and just helping them end up where the existing community is. And that's why you think about someone like Josh Fiore, he's just brilliant, right? Giving of his time and his energy and kind of wisdom back into that community, as opposed to just turning up and crushing it year on year, which so often you can see out of elite racers. I think keeping people like that within the group is just brilliant.
All right, I think it's a good place to stop.
Miss you already.